Hello, my name is Ham Donishman, and here we are today to talk about another feature of Verasys system. So this is another Verasys video series that we are completing, and we're about providing that for your use for future training of Verasys. So today we're going to be talking about the connectivity side of the Smart Building Hub in Verasys. Smart Building Hub is the key component of the Verasys that connects to the network, connects to the components of Verasys, to equipment of Verasys, and provides the user interface to the system. The Smart Building Hub also has the capability of connecting to the building network, the backbone of a building, more on the Ethernet side, the IP side of the building, and then provides the remote connectivity that's needed to access the system remotely from anywhere in the world. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before I jump into that, one of the big key initiatives, or at least understanding around connectivity, is to really understand the IT side of the system, or at least having that communication, understanding the language, understanding how Smart Building Hub connects, the security side of Smart Building Hub, and be able to have that communication to the IT person that you're approaching for that particular building or the project that you're involved in. What I can tell you right now is one of the most important feature of Verasys is the connectivity. The system comes alive when you connect to the Ethernet, connect to the internet. And having that access remotely brings a lot of power into the system, into your palm of your hands, that you could basically be anywhere in the world to control the system and be able to monitor the system and be able to possibly remotely fix issues. The other thing about connectivity is that one of the other nice features of Verasys is that when there are faults or alarms, and based on being critical or non-critical and how you have it set up in the system, that's when you could get your alarming through emails and texting. If we don't have the Smart Building Hub connected to the network or the internet, that feature does not work or is disabled. So that's what we're going to talk about. Before I jump into that, what I want to talk, at least point you to the right documentation that's needed for having that conversation with the IT person. So there's two ways to get this documentation. One is through verasyscontrols.com. If you have access to that, please do get your partnership username and password. And then the other way is basically go into Google and type in Quicklette, this Quicklette right here, and you'll see Johnson Controls Quicklette. By clicking that, you get this link, and you get with this page in this Quicklette search. And within the search, all you have to do is just type in Verasys, and then hit go. And then all the Verasys documentation will show up on this list. And if the document that I'm curious about here is this Verasys Smart Building Hub Network and IT Guidance Technical Bulletin. This particular document talks very clearly around IT language, around what it takes to connect this smart building up into the network. And this is really the documentation that you need to read and be able to pass it on to that IT person. So it's a very good conversation to have as far as security, as far as connectivity, as far as how you install certificates. It's all laid out in this document, and this is a document that I would say when an IT person sees it, they feel much more comfortable about this particular device sitting on their network. So again, this is important. It's lit number -120-12324, and that's the document you need to download and have it with you, at least have it part of your Verasys documentation portfolio. So I'm going to go back to my Google Map here. I start all my Verasys series with a Google Map. Google Map is another training session that I will cover at a different training video. But this is basically how I'll start all my videos. I'm going to go to a particular job. It's called Masterson's Group. It's a live system I'm going to log into. And this particular site is in Louisville, Kentucky. So again, it's live system, and I'm going to show you the settings around what you have to do to be able to connect the Smart Building Hub into the internet. So again, think about you have an IT person that you're already communicating with. The best way, or at least the most simplest way from my perspective, is to make that connection, is to have that conversation with your IT person. And really one of the first things you would ask is, I want to connect this building hub. I have my settings that I need, and these settings that you want to go to it's under settings. It's one section called Ethernet. Within this section, this is what you have to have, information that you have to fill in to be able to connect. So one of the most important information that you're going to need to know is, how does that IT person want you to connect? Does he want you to be DHCP on or off? What I would recommend is off, because being off, you get what's called a static IP address, which would be dedicated to this controller only. So there will be no switching from another address to another address. If you turn that on, if that's what the IT person wants, then you have to define the name for this particular Smart Building Hub, which would be up here, and then that's how you assign, or at least when you pull up a browser, you have to put in the name and then be able to get to your hub. The reason I say static is much better is just because we know we have a identified IP address and it's not going to switch on us. We've seen less problem when we have static IP addresses rather than DHCP. So just keep that in mind. It's just a recommendation that I like to follow. So one of the first things that you'll see in this page, since this device is already set up, typically the way it comes up is off. You want to make sure the Ethernet is on, and that's one of the first things you would do. You get a host name, which is basically a default. You could change that if you like, or fill in some, or leave it as is. I just left it in this case. One thing I want to identify here, if you look at the Smart Building Hub itself, the Smart Building Hub, when you open the box, it comes with a 9-volt power supply. It's a wall wart type of a power supply. And so when you connect the Ethernet into for the first time, you want to make sure that you power up the Smart Building Hub with the power supply that's given to you. If you had an initial startup by just connecting the cord that comes with the Smart Building Hub, and you connect it to the RJ11FC port, which is our field bus, then which gives you power and connectivity. But when you connect to Ethernet, you must have the power supply. And the reason that being is that the 9-volt power supply is actually powering up the Ethernet port that's on the box. So it's a must. Without the 9-volt power supply, Ethernet would never turn on. So again, please take that away. We must have the 9-volt power supply connected. So you turn this on. That would be the first thing you would do. And in this case, I told it turn off my DHCP, so I'll turn it off. And this is really where I need the information from the IT person. They'll provide you with the IP address, and this is my static IP address was given to me. And when I say static IP address, again, it depends on what the customer is giving you. Hopefully, in a sense that this particular static IP address it can be punched through their firewall, which means you have access to it outside of their network. In this case, with this particular customer, that's exactly what this is happening. This address has been identified as one of the IP addresses that goes through their firewall, and so I could get access remotely. You have what's called a subnet mask that you have to enter as well. Again, this comes from the IT person, and they will be able to give you that information. And also what's called the default gateway. And this default gateway is something, again, your IT person can provide to you. The next two items here is called auto DNS configuration. Now you could leave that on, and the system will just auto configure and come up with its own server IP addresses. Or typically, again, the IT person may not want you to do that. You turn it off, In this case, you can use this 8.8.4.4, which I do recommend, or it could be 8.8.8.8, and that's actually a Google IP address. It's a very fast DNS server that we use, and it's been very helpful for us using this server because it can really get us faster communication. And when you have email and texting, it goes through this DNS server, and it really gets us much faster turnaround time. So you could definitely use this if you like, or possibly again the IT person may give you that information. The second is just a backup DNS server in case this one fails, and this usually comes from the IT person as well. So not too many parameters here. It may be a little bit of training up front, especially having that conversation with IT person. In some ways, you can actually have the IT person give them access to SPH and let them fill this information out. That's probably one of the best things you can do. That way they have a lot more comfort level of what's being done. After this is completed, you hit save, and the settings within the Ethernet is ready to go. The next thing you have to make sure of is you have an Ethernet cable that's been provided to you. You plug that into the Ethernet jack of the SPH. Again, making sure you have your power supply plugged in. And probably the best thing to do after you save it, do another reset and let it come up. And what you should be seeing after it comes up, the Ethernet light should be blinking away. And the way you can test this is basically pull up your phone, your iPad, or the computer, and then hit the IP address that's been provided to you to be able to get to the network. And in this example, as you can see, this 74.143.14.251, I used that in my browser link here, and by doing that and hitting go, I was able to access the system. This concludes this section of the Ethernet settings for Verasys. I hope you can come back and see some of the other Verasys videos that we'll have shortly. Thank you very much for joining.